They should let me get up there. I actually know something.
Okay. So let's review really quick. What is economics? Remember from yesterday, what is economics? And these are the kind of things I just am going to expect you to know. So I don't have to go over and over again what economics is. What's economics? What? And if you forgot, hey, we often give the exact definition. I get it. Quick look. Give you an opportunity to look. Isn't that nice of me? I know what you're thinking. I'm doing this. Oh, after that, I almost forgot something. Did you find what economics is? Anyone found it? Raise your hand if you know what economics is. Or do you want me to randomly call people? Look, let's go. Look. Yeah.
I don't have like a set definition, but you were talking about is it revolves around taxes and inflation.
I'm pretty sure I gave it a very set definition, didn't I? I didn't?
No.
You talking about
You yeah, for about 30 minutes.
we talk about the creation of currency.
Here's one problem I have, and now I'm mad at all of you. So I teach 4 AP US history classes. And sometimes I forget what I tell one class. And since I told first and third period, I just assume you guys know. You passed them in the hallway, you should have talked. I really didn't tell you?
No.
Hey, guess what I'm going to do now? I'm going to tell you about how we evacuated cases of Israel. Then I'll come back to economics. I really didn't. Did you guys get in cahoots just to play a trick on me?
You just talk about mercantilism and
Stuff.
war with France, colonies going to laws, not colonies to form their own colonies. That's what it's
Talk about sanitary neglect.
All right, here we go. All right, we had everyone, you know the drill we had, right? I didn't talk about the evacuation procedure. You want me to tell you about evacuation procedure? We have to know. What do we do if we evacuate? So clear, there's a fire or something like that. The alarm goes off. What do we do if we have an alarm? Okay, last person in each row. You have very important directions. Are we ready for this? Stand up very quickly. Once you hear that buzz sound, and you can't think, you got to stand up, take a couple steps back, and then run head first through the window. Right? And then the important thing is you have to lay on the broken glass. Why do you lay on the broken glass? Yes.
So people can climb over our bodies.
Let's not go people.
People. Yeah.
Who?
The rest. Friends.
Me. So I can pick which window for me to go to safety, right? And then the rest of you, I wish you luck. But a cadre of civilization must survive to rebuild. Do you agree with me on that?
Yeah.
If it's just a drill, we'll save the windows. And let's practice that. All right, guys. All right. I'm joking a little bit about this kind of thing, and obviously we know what to do with the fire. There will be other times we talk about a drill, maybe in about 2 weeks. I think you all understand we'll be a little more serious. Let's just talk about this right now. What we do is we just get up, and our number is 68. Let's hold it the other way, then it's 89. I'll designate someone to hold it. But we all walk out, and you notice how we go to, the soccer field. We all know where that's at. And they have the classes kind of line up, and they have one line of classes closer to the school, another one, and another one. Everyone know what I'm talking about? We are in the first row, so the closest to the building, like pretty much exactly in the middle. There's like this dead tree on the other side of the path. We're like right in front of the dead tree. It's really easy. So we go there, I take roll. We know the routine, right? That's for a drill. The real deal, gotta save me. All right. And then what we're doing another drill, like lockdown, and then more severe drills. Some of those we can be live, but at the same time we got to be serious. Okay. So, hey, let's tell you about economics. Before we get to that, I talked about mercantilism. What were the laws that Britain passed to enforce mercantilism? Yeah. What were the names? The blanket name for them. Say it again. You got Navigation Acts. And what do they? What kind of taxes do they do?
Tariffs, excise taxes, and tariffs and excise.
Exactly. Excise taxes were on items that were built or constructed, farmed, where? Were they in your own country or were they on imports? Tariffs on imports. Excise tax are things built here. And what did the Hat Act do? The Woolen Act do? Yeah.
The Hat Act, they couldn't produce hats in
Yeah.
the United States because they wanted to buy them.
So they could gouge them. Exactly. What Molasses Act? What did they make from molasses? Rum. And how did they try to? How did they try to enforce that? Wait a minute, I jumped the gun here. Why couldn't they enforce that? What was that called? Yeah. Oh, let's go right here. Sounds here in the glass. War, etc. Hey, let's do economics now. I really thought I did. I didn't mean to get mad at you. You should have corrected me. I know you did. You did. All right. So let's do economics really quick. Economics. You want orange?
Yes.
Yeah, that's economics. So most people think of economics, they just think of business. This is business. Economics, you can see it directly from gold. It is how individuals, societies, or entire nations, we get to how people, they can be different from individuals all the way up to the entire country, how people deal with scarcity, aka things like gold. How do you deal with that gold or water or what it means? So it's more than just business. Oh, sure, we might decide that we're going to allow individuals to be the providers of food or shelter or heat, and we pay for it, business. Or we can decide that everybody will cooperate equally, or that the government will provide it. We can decide a number of things. All that is economics and how we deal with scarce resources. We live in Montana. It doesn't rain here. So we as a society had to deal an economic decision on how we deal with almost no water. It rains about 10 to 13 inches a year here. And that's nothing. How do we deal with it? Massive programs to do things like build dams to save and preserve the water. That is an economic decision. So that's economics. And I'm sorry I thought I told you that. And the thing about it was then is that we have this mercantilism they could not enforce. There were 13 unique economies being created. Now, we of course can't go over all 13. But we have New England, Middle Atlantic, Chesapeake, the slave empire, aka North and South. So these are much closer. So we're going to talk just generically about the two different economies. So you're going to make it your notes this nice little table, North and or South. By the way, it is Friday, everybody. It's Flamingo Friday. Are you ready? You want to see it? You ready? Are you excited? Wow! No, come on. This deserves an applause. Come on. And by the way, there is no test today. The Chiefs absolutely destroyed the Ravens.
Yeah.
It was an absolute destruction.
They will won the O-line.
No, I mean, the Ravens took it a lot, but I think they would have won. And the Chiefs blew opportunities, and now, if you weren't a fan of one of the teams, it was exciting. So, North and South. No, I think the Ravens won. The big thing, the difference was geography. What was the name of this kind of flat land here? Remember I gave you that name you did on your map?
That's a swampy area.
Swampy area. Had water in it. Do you remember?
Bay.
Yeah. No.
Bay.
The term had water in it. Tide water. Do you remember that term now for your?
Oh, yeah.
The tidewater area, relatively flat and swampy. What's it like up here? Yeah. There are mountains, these low mountains right up to the sea. It's pretty spectacular if you go there. I mean, you can still see it in elements here, like Gulf of Maine. I mean, it's right up to the sea. And so that means, yeah, there's really some fertile soil, but there's smaller valleys. It's harder to grow bigger land, but there's also trees right there. There's also animals right there. It's different. And so you're going to have different economies developed by not only what kind of land, but the people who went to the south, they wanted to create big landholdings to become English gentlemen. In the north, you got people like the Puritans who were trying to practice their own religion, and they really couldn't have land in England, so they were more, or they had different economic goals. So in the north, most farms are relatively small. Even the biggest farms are small, and they grow food products: wheat, maize, beans. And, okay, there were some plantations, so this is just generic. There were plantations along the Hudson, and yes, they had enslaved people. There were plantations in southern New Jersey, and there were plantations with slaves in New Jersey during the Civil War. And Pennsylvania had some enslaved people. But without plantations, mass enslaved people was too expensive. It just economically didn't work. Not that they were so morally superior. But there's something else. There's more merchants in the north. Because there's not as much farming, there's going to have to be different ways to make a living. Buy, sell goods, etc. There's more of a merchant class. And once you have merchants, you have two different things that go with it. There are no banks. Banks as we know it are just being created. There's no banks. There's going to be no banks as we know it in the early United States to the 1790s. But there's creditors who loan money. Yes, there are creditors in the South, but there's more in the North because loaning money is big business. So if you're going to have merchants, that means a lot of bills of sales and contracts. And same thing, a lot of contracts being written because you owe money, you make an IOU, that's a contract. There's a heck of a lot of lawyers in the North. And there's an entire printing industry. There's more newspapers, there's more pamphlets in the North, which is business. That's a very technical business. This is the beginnings of capitalism. And what else is there? A lot more shipping. They're just violating the law. That's supposed to be a G. There's fishing. Some of the best fishing in the world. What about here? Unbelievable. Just couldn't comprehend how great the fishing was. Not now. It started declining in the 1800s, and then 20th century. Industrial fishing, they cleaned it out. It was hard. I mean, there's not near as many fish as there used to be. They worldwide, especially those areas. Next, what other areas? Right along the tree, right along the forest, you have these old growth, wide, big, huge trees. So, timber or wood products. Fur trade, massive fur trade. Iron, hat. I can keep going. Do you get the point here? I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that, hey, everyone wore a hat. We got a hat business. That's big business. Get the point? The majority were small farms, but it wasn't a huge majority. Okay, the majority of people in the South too were small farms. But remember, these are the descendants of indentured servants for the most part. They don't have very good land. They don't produce a lot. What else? Well, what kind of agriculture? Yeah. Cash crops. And what do we call the kind of farms that grow cash crops? Yeah, the big plantations. Very good. Plantations, AKA cash crops. Cash crops, plantation. Now, let's be clear. The plantations were mostly big slave labor camps. And they would build a big mansion, and they would try to make it look like an English country home, but behind were the slave quarters. So, plantations. What were the big crops? We all know the biggest crop. What was it? It's still tobacco. Yes. Tobacco. We know the next biggest crop? Okay. Good guess on cotton, but not quite yet. The Industrial Revolution had to happen for cotton. Yeah? Good guess, but a little bit too far north. corn wasn't a big cash crop. The small farmers would grow corn that they would sell to the slave quarters, but it didn't make a lot of money. Say it again. Wheat, they could grow wheat, but it wasn't a huge cash crop. What really grew in the swamps of South Carolina was a food product. What can you grow in swamps? Food. Peanut, no, they weren't really growing those. They grew some peanuts. Peanuts become big business in about 100 years. Yeah? Huh?
I was just going to say melons for everybody. Swamps.
He's not going to make a lot of money out of melons. And not a lot of protein, even though they're delicious. Rice. Rice. And what's the dye? What's the dye they could grow? Indigo, yeah. Indigo grows in swamp. This is all South Carolina. And, okay, let me tell you real quick what indigo was. You ever seen a cattail? Indigo plant looks something like a cattail. They would cut them, miserable, dangerous workers. You go to South Carolina, there's alligators everywhere. Enslaved people would cut this down, and they would stick it on the shore to rot. And as it would rot, it would begin to turn, like black and stink. But then they would beat it on a rock, and each of these indigo cattails would leave kind of like a purple splotch. And you would sweep it up, and it would be the most valuable dye in the world. Purple dye was so valuable. Purple was the color of royalty. So if you could have purple dye, exactly. Have you noticed this? I am clearly royal. I'm a citizen of the U.S. I don't like king, so no. So I'm going to be royal. How about that? But, and that comes from ancient Mesopotamia, of course. But indigo. What's the other big business? Cotton's coming, but it will be in the next century. No, don't even think product. Another commodity that they could buy and sell that would turn into big money. Something that they owned. Yeah. Slaves. Enslaved people. Yeah. Enslaved people. I know I pointed at both Derek and Eric on that one. They both have their hand up. But thank you, Derek, for answering. And enslaved people. Hey, it was more than just slavery became bigger, in fact, a lot more valuable than just somebody to pick that cash crop. That, yes, it's not free, but they can do that work without you don't have to worry about pay or anything else. Slaves became a massive source of wealth. Slaves were something you could pass on to your children. Slaves were something that if you needed extra money, you sell a few of the slave children and you have cash. Hey, slavery was horrific. Slavery was something that's even more important. Remember I told you how farmers are always in debt? If you need to borrow money, what is that term for something you put down to secure your loan? A down payment is something you actually pay. A contract's what you sign. Anybody know what you put down to secure a loan? So if you have to pay back the loan, they take something you own. Yeah. Collateral. Slaves became the most important collateral. So you're going into the 1700s, but in the 1800s, slaves became big business. It became more than just someone to work to death picking your crops. It became something you bought and sold. Now, a couple things about this. Oh, just so you know, there was fur. There was fur. There was a wood industry. The problem they had was the trees that grew in the tidewater were all really thin. Small, almost like scrub pines. So they're not going to be very valuable. The old growth would be in the Appalachian Mountains, and that was a long ways away. So it was hard for them to compete. Fur trade, there were a lot of beavers, but the majority of the beaver were here. That was a big animal they wanted to kill. And so that's it. Let me ask you one thing. Let's say you're an immigrant. Let's say you're in England, and we can make it after the United States is formed. It's 1800. And these are the economies that grew in the northern colonies, now states, and the southern. And you have Very difficult life in England. You're barely making it. You save every penny you have to make the very scary voyage at that time across the Atlantic Ocean. Which section would you be more likely to go to? Because you're like most immigrants, you have nothing. Except your hard work. Immigrants are very hard working people. Huh? Why? Exactly. The North. There's a lot more stuff. What were we gonna say?
There's also a lot more opportunity.
It's same thing. Stuff. Even not stuff you can find a job, which means opportunity. Exactly. It's a more diversified economy. Very good. More diversified economy. Everyone got that? What's going to happen to the population of the North and South from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War? Which section is going to grow faster? So, 32, 33 million people when the Civil War began in 1861. 23 million of them were in the North. There were only 9 million people in the states that formed the Confederacy. And 4 million of those were enslaved. Kind of a big deal on the population when you're fighting a war. So when the South started the war, they had that issue. And 4 million slaves, well, 4 million slaves are not going to fight to keep the system of slavery going. And so that's key. Here's another thing. Here's another term that I'm not forgetting to tell you. I'm embarrassed about the economics. Egalitarian, you like my N? That kind of looks like an N, right, doesn't it? If you shut your eyes and imagine the letter N, it'll look like an N. Anybody know what egalitarian means? Okay, it's close to equality, but it means more equality. This is what we have to get. More equality between the classes. So the lower class and upper class don't have this big mass or big a divide. Yeah, sure, there's a divide. There is certainly an upper class in the North and the South. But which one had a smaller gap between the rich and the poor? Which section, the North and the South? Which one was more egalitarian? Exactly. So the North was more egalitarian, much more egalitarian. I should add, the South the class system was really strict, but not as strict as Britain. So now, today, the United States is not egalitarian at all. Other countries are much more egalitarian. We have a massive gap between the classes, unlike countries that used to be much more unequal, like France or Britain or Japan. China's becoming more like the United States. Britain's always kind of like that. But we're not like this. But, okay, if I say the word democracy, you know what democracy means, kind of. If someone would have said democracy at this time, it would have been this idea that people in the lower class, as well as the upper class, can make their own decisions, can decide their own fate, can decide their own government. Which section was more democratic? North or South? Yeah, the North. North was a lot more democratic. Is it like that today? Yeah, the North is still more democratic. There are more laws in the North, more laws in the South that have restrictions on voting. I'm not talking about political parties, I'm just talking about democracy. There are more laws in the North, or more laws in the South that restrict voting, make it more difficult to vote in the South. There's a greater percentage of people vote in the North than the South today. Just the way it is. Now, you could say I disagree or agree with what they vote for, but that's not the point here. Egalitarian is a little more complex, depends where you live. And what's Montana, by the way? Does our legacy come from the northern colonies or the southern colonies? We were more northern up until about the 1990s. And now Montana is becoming very close to southern. Montana is very close. The closest analogy is we're becoming Texas. Very fast, very quick. Now you can say that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's what we're becoming. They play tonight, the Eagles? Yeah. You have to pay.
Yeah, I'm probably just gonna go like windbag and watch the game or something because I don't got that.
Yeah, and there's a football game tonight here, but also, yeah, if you want to watch the Eagles, you have to go pay.
So stupid.
That's so annoying. That's what I call, I was easily distracted because I remember the Eagles.
Parker, who do you think's gonna win? Eagles or Packers?
Huh? Well, the Eagles.
Of course.
All right. I like it. So, this is the two unique economies. They're growing. And now we're in this complex trading network, and that's why I got to turn and show you. So, they all make their living, though, by trading overseas. Remember, even if they're developing unique economies, they want to trade goods to Britain or France or other colonies. So that's where we get this concept of triangular trade. And the thing about triangular trade is everybody's trying to maximize profits. Those who sell want to make the most money as possible. Those who are buying the goods and want to be the middleman and sell it again, maximize profits. Or, more importantly, the shippers. Shipping is incredibly expensive, very dangerous, and anytime you have a ship that's empty, the hull is empty, you're not making money. And so the concept of triangular trade is shipping companies, these merchants, are trying to maximize profits by saying every time that ship sails, it's got something in it we can sell. So triangular trade would be this trade developed to maximize profits. So that kind of gives you a bunch of little things like that. Then they give you an example of one ship, and this is the prototypical triangular trade from colonial America. And so this is something that, you don't need to know the name of the ship, but just kind of know the basics of it. Because a lot of ships would do it. 1752, we have the Sanderson. And the Sanderson would make the 18-month voyage. Things moved a lot slower then. Boy, sailors had to be tough. What was the disease all the sailors would catch? Scurvy. Scurvy, because you know what? Vitamin C oranges. Lime juice could be preserved, so in the Royal Navy they started giving lime juice to the sailors. They just realized that stops scurvy, and that's why if you hear someone from Britain called a limey, that's where it comes from. Back to this. So it started from here, and I've carried a few things, but the big thing is, this is what we have to get. New England to Africa. Rum. A manufactured good rum. And they would trade rum for what? Enslaved people. So everyone got that? New England, Africa, rum. Africa to the Caribbean. In the Sanderson's case, it was the Barbados, a British colony. And they would carry people. What is the voyage from Africa to the New World called? That horrific, nightmarish voyage. The Middle Passage. So everyone got this now. So if I asked you to do this, you quickly draw a little triangle. Rum! Middle Passage for slaves. And what do they make? What do they use to make rum? Molasses. And molasses up to here. So every single time that ship is making money. I'll talk about how the slaves, there are all these African kingdoms here who would sell slaves. And most of the slaves were probably like indentured servants who then were kidnapped. They did it willingly to pay off a debt, and that's something you know. Yeah. Which makes it even more terrifying. Which is the most profitable? It depends on how you look at it. This is the least, though, because it's not manufactured. Molasses. And then either the rum or humans. That's the most popular. Because the rum bought the humans, but the humans depending on the slave market. And you have this trade developing. And you have English shippers getting into it. American-owned merchants. By the way, I'm saying American for the colonies. They did not yet call themselves Americans if they lived in colonies. I say it just because it's generic, we know what it means. So if you're from Virginia, you would have said, I'm a Virginian. You wouldn't have said, I'm an American. That would have made no sense. If it's 1750, and I'll have to tell you this story again, but if you would have said there's an American, you would have been referring to the original Americans. That was an American. You are a Virginian. Or you are a New Yorker. Or you're an Englishman. So, 1660 to 1675 then. We have unique economies, and with that happening, the colonies grew in population by 1,000%. And so, just a few areas in 1660, the colonized turned almost complete control all the way up to the Appalachian Mountains, to the divide of the Appalachians. And you'll notice there are French colonies in the north, not near as populous, but doing the same thing. The French claim this, but there are only a couple cities, like Vincennes, St. Louis, New Orleans, and a few cities like Montreal and Quebec, not near as many. And then we have, of course, New Spain. All these colonies, and they're all fighting each other. But at the same time, if you have unique economies developing, there's unique cultures developing too. And the Great Awakening would be a religious revival in the colonies. It started in Britain, but would spread like wildfire and change religion forever. So the Protestant faiths in the early 1700s were declining dramatically. The Protestant faiths. And the mainstream Protestants, they put it here. Anglican, Church of England. Congregational, which were the Puritans. Lutheran, so Lutheran were started in what is now Germany, and Presbyterian were Scottish Calvinists. But then this new Protestant faith developed, and it's centered around these religious revivals, very evangelical, trying to get more people to join, outside of the mainstream religions. So people might have been raised Anglican, Church of England, but they would have this conversion, and it'd be this very emotional change to a new religion. And they were these fire and brimstone, heaven and hell, where you would have these charismatics, which were these itinerants, meaning they moved around and they weren't part of one church, give these sermons. And they would be these, and they started calling them preaching, so preachers. And they would give these sermons where people would go into this kind of religious ecstasy and shake and fall on the ground or speak in tongues and yell out sayings or slogans or agreements and singing. It was so much different than the very, very dogmatic Anglican. Or the Puritan minister would stand in front and we would all read the Bible together. We would read it for 5 or 6 hours and read it and read it and read it and go through every page and see, it says right here, and we're going to prove that we're going to heaven because we do this, so I've been blessed. Imagine 5 hours of that, or standing and singing and quaking and cheering. All these people joined. 2 new faiths. It started in Britain. And now they're going to become mainstream, but they were on the fringes. They were called a word you might have heard of, cults. The Methodists and the Baptists. And the Baptist was this idea that you, as an adult, have been or have reached, and add this word, salvation. Or as they called it, your permanent eternal. You have reached salvation. And you made this personal change, and now you will be going to heaven. So it's not like it was before, where I have to prove I'm blessed or go through this procedure. It is a very personal, emotional. And that really tied to people who went to the colonies and could see maybe things weren't quite what we thought when we came here and I'll have liberty in all this land. It's more like I'm in debt and it's difficult, but this is going to change everything. Right here is George Whitefield. Almost forgot. And it's very egalitarian. It's not top down. It's the idea that regular farmers have rights. And it was no classes. And they believed that they should have individual freedoms and control over the money, control over the government. The Great Awakening would be really important for the American Revolution. The American Revolution was very democratic. And that would scare the heck out of the powers that be, and they would write something that was anti-democratic called the United States Constitution. And that's coming down the road. So, George Whitefield would be probably the most famous. So, if you ever heard the term salvation, that's Great Awakening. And churches would all change. You're going to see all would have to change some way because they're losing people to this. When the Industrial Revolution would totally change the world, there'd be a second Great Awakening. And then when all the new technology of the 20th century would happen, there'd be this fundamentalist revolution in religion in the 1920s. So salvation, soon we'll get terms like the rapture and things like that are coming. So with that, so that was a change in society. But, you know, we're back, it's still imperialism. If I put down colonial imperialism, what's imperialism? I wrote that word, I say it, everyone knows. You know what imperialism means? An imperial country is a country that's trying to create a what?
Empire.
An empire. So everybody write down, colonial imperialism is empire. Why? Now places like Russia, for example, in Europe, would create an empire by they go conquer it. Like they conquered Poland they conquered the eastern part of Poland and just made it part of Russia. Austria conquered the southern part and made it part of Austria. Or Britain came into areas, planted the flag, so that's called. Why did they do an empire? Yeah.
It's not only about economically, but also for power.
That's exactly the word. They did it for power. It's an empire for power. And what's the power? Profit, money, wealth, prestige. Empire for power and profit. Everyone got that? Now, what's colonial empire? You literally go to an area and say, it's mine, and plant your flag. I'm taking it for me forever. For example, when Champlain went down the Mississippi River, for the French, and most of the tribal members of the tribes there have been devastated by disease. And he got to this really big river called the Missouri. Have you heard of the Missouri? So he got to the Missouri. And he looked at the Missouri. And in fact, where it runs to the Mississippi, they're about the same size. So he's looking at the Missouri. Mississippi's a little bit bigger. And he said, I claim for France all tributaries of the Missouri. What's a tributary of the Missouri? You're sitting on the tributaries of the Missouri. So he just got the flag and claimed it all. And that was imperial, colonial imperialism. So France claimed it. They named it after the king. They called it Louisiana. King Louis, Louisiana. And the United States would buy that land claim in 1803. And that would eventually, the United States would conquer that land. And you're sitting on the land that the United States colonized. Montana. So that's how they did it. And their goal then, exploit the resources. So they want to go in and take it. Now remember, the people actually colonized, they might think they're going to go there to become an English country gentleman, or like most of them, so you get a little piece of farm and liberty. But if you're an empire and you conquer an area, can you allow the people who live in that colony to decide their own fate if you want to exploit their resources? Can you allow them to have self-government? Can you allow them to have their own laws? AKA, there's no democracy. Wherever there's empire, they don't allow for democracy, even for the colonists who go there. So salutary neglect. The colonists developed their unique identity, including economy, and we just said religion. And what's going on? As soon as the British have the power, they're going to say, that's cute. We're cracking down, and you're paying the taxes. So, one more word. Settler colonialism. Settler colonialism literally means where they come in, you take individuals in, and they come in to where other people are living, and they take it and they move in. Not all type of colonialism is that. For example, Britain really couldn't do settler colonialism when they conquered places like much of India, because there were too many people there. But settler colonialism with American Indians didn't work because of disease. It worked in Australia. It worked for the Dutch and the British in South Africa too. They would just come in. Now, how do they justify it? Anyone in Latin? No one's in Latin in this class either? One? What's terra mean?
Land.
Land. What does nullis mean? You ever anybody refer to something of that null and void, or that's null? No. Nothing. And this is what they said. Terra nullis, the land is empty. It's just wilderness. Nobody lives there, so we can take the land. Was that true? No. There were a lot of people there. Now, a significant number had died of disease and their entire society broke down. But there were a lot of people who lived there. But they would say, this is all wilderness, so we can take it. So when I was in school, when I was in American history class, and in most places around the United States, American history is a survey level class in junior year. Hey, you made it to your junior year. Congratulations. I was told that it was an empty wilderness in America. That's what I was told by my teachers. Because they were told that, and told that, and told that throughout the years. But no, it was not like that in Montana, where you live right now. This land was taken. And if they resisted, what happened to them? They were killed. And most were killed if they resisted. The rest were put in isolation, aka reservations. That's colonial settlement. That's settler colonialism. So you have all these people doing it. And you have now Britain, France, Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, massive one for the Dutch. By the 1750s, Britain and France were trying to take advantage of all these different kingdoms fighting each other in India. So you have all these things going on. And it's happening in the colonies. And this is going to spread to massive wars all over. But to our point of view, back to the United States, it's happening. This imperialism right here on the border. And so we have to give you today why it's happening. Last few things. The fur trade. The fur trade is how this worked. The fur trade is how settler colonialism worked in the Americas. It's how the United States would conquer where you're sitting. They got the land claim and then they took it from the people who lived here. Not very many, but. So, here's what happened. When the colonists first arrived there was trade between the colonists and the American Indians. But remember what I told you about the Powhatans? They had to get everything to the Powhatans for the Virginians to survive. Food, they had to get furs for the winter that was much colder than they thought, and the summers were miserably hot. And they had to get everything and learn how to plant crops. They had to get tobacco from them. And you can imagine that the tribes are like, God, these people will give anything for them. They're helpless. They're idiots. But as the colonies grew and figured it out and started growing their own land, as the tribes began to shrink because of disease, the tribes stopped farming. Now, these were all massive agricultural kingdoms with big cities, walled. All on the coast were these walled cities where the tribes lived. They kind of made these kind of spiral walls, wooden stockades. But now they're dying. If they're dying, you can't really do farming. The whole system breaks down. And not only that, once people start dying in large numbers with this horrific disease, people don't have any children. It disrupts that whole nature of the way that families would start. It just blows it all up. So populations begin to shrink, but they still need to live. So they quit farming, and they look at the Europeans who now are growing their own food, but what they really want is fur. As the colonies grew and this tribe shrunk, soon fur became the only trade along the frontier. So what I'm talking about is like this. Everyone look at this map real quick. Right here. Right on this edge here in 1640, which is fur trade. 1660, 1700. And the French were doing the same thing, kind of moving here. Kind of fur trade and kind of expanding. Right on the edge. And then once technology changes, are expanding really fast. Start trading for fur. What was the animal? Beaver. What do you get out of beaver? What can you use beaver for? Hats. Hats are the big thing. So beaver have basically two kinds of fur. And the fur on top is a really thick, almost like a brush. And they have to take these wire bristles and scrape off this outside fur. Underneath is this felt that keeps the beaver warm under the water. It's waterproof for a hat. And so they started just massacring beaver. Beaver are relatively easy to trap. And what's going to happen to the population of beaver? Gone. So think about tribes. 20 years, they went from farming and doing everything for themselves to only trading for fur. Trading fur. And they would trade fur for maize, corn, iron pots, for weapons. Has anyone ever tried to make a bow and arrow? I don't know. I mean, a real one. Not when you got a stick, put a string on, and shoot at your friends and knock poke your eyes out. You never tried to make a compound bow? You have? Huh? Okay, so because they make compound bows too, but you made a recurve, so, and you made it from. And it really, and to make one that works really well is really easy, right? It's okay to make one that's accurate to be used well, and you didn't, and where are you going to get bamboo and doing it? But it's difficult, time-consuming work. And then you ever to become good at shooting a bow? You were good at shooting a bow. You people, it ain't easy. I mean, you can shoot one, especially with the pressure on it. Is it easier to shoot a musket or a bow? Is it easier to make a bow or to kill a beaver and kill 5 beaver and trade it for a musket? What's easier? How about making a waterproof basket out of bark? Can you imagine doing that? Can you imagine how difficult that would be? Or kill a beaver and trade it for 9 o'clock? How quickly did all their old skills go away for the tribes? One generation, 2 years. It's amazing how fast it all left. And that's what we've done. Tomorrow, Sunday, Saturday. I'm already into the weekend. I have really good news for you though. You want to hear my good news?
Yes.
This weekend will be over like that. And you'll be right back. I know! And then every year you get older, grades get faster. Yeah. So the end is getting close for me. And yet my grades get faster. Seems unfair. Should I get slower? But the end is nigh. And you're ready to pay a fine?
Oh no, vehicle registration for my thing.
So when you get back, you'll take that quiz, finish that map, doing the notes. We're all going to watch a movie. I never did come over and grab the course. Is your name on it? Rank, serial number?
This year I did last year.
You're good.
I know.
Okay, so I have this graded. We recorded them. And so I'm going to hand back a bunch of papers. How much of you're taking the quiz? We only have 37-minute periods.
Yeah. I don't know what you're gonna get done in 37 minutes.
Have a great weekend, everybody. Try to get by without seeing the flamingo.
Yeah,